Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, drumming against the windows of Elena's suburban home like restless fingers. She stood in her kitchen, watching the droplets race down the glass, each one carrying away a piece of the warmth she once felt in this house. Behind her, the dinner dishes sat forgotten in the sink, remnants of another quiet meal shared with her husband Marcus and their longtime friend David. But now Marcus was upstairs, already lost in sleep, and David remained at the kitchen table, his coffee growing cold as he stared at something Elena couldn't see. There was a heaviness in the air tonight, something unspoken that had been building for months. Elena felt it, in the way David's eyes lingered on her when Marcus wasn't looking, in the way her own heart skipped when their hands accidentally brushed. "Elena," David's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Can we talk?" She turned from the window, and the look in his eyes made her stomach flutter with anticipation and dread. Whatever he was about to say, she knew it would change everything between them forever. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap. Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached for her own coffee cup, using the familiar motion to steady herself. Outside, the storm seemed to intensify, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what was about to unfold. "I should probably go," David said, but he made no move to leave. Instead, he stood slowly, his tall frame casting shadows across the dimly lit kitchen. "But I can't. Not tonight. Not without telling you something I've been carrying for too long." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. She had known this moment would come, had felt it approaching like a distant storm. For months now, their friendship had been shifting into something deeper, something more dangerous. The way he looked at her during family dinners, the way he found excuses to help her with household projects when Marcus was away on business trips, the way his voice softened when he spoke her name. "David, don't," she whispered, but even as the words left her lips, she knew she didn't mean them. Part of her had been waiting for this conversation, longing for it even as she feared it. He took a step closer, and she could smell his cologne, mixed with the rain he'd carried in from outside. "I have to, Elena. I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just friendship. I can't keep lying to myself, or to you." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too intimate. The soft glow from the pendant lights above the island created a cocoon around them, shutting out the rest of the world. Marcus's presence upstairs seemed both a barrier and a reminder of everything that stood between them. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, trying to maintain some distance, even as her body seemed to gravitate toward him. "Marcus is your best friend. He's been your best friend since college. You stood beside him at our wedding, David. You were there when we bought this house, when you cried in this very kitchen because you felt like you were disappearing." David interrupted gently. "When you told me you felt like you were drowning in a marriage that had become more like a business partnership than a love story. When you said you couldn't remember the last time Marcus really saw you." The words hit Elena like a physical blow, because they were true. She had confided in David during one of Marcus's longer business trips, when the loneliness had become unbearable and David had stopped by to check on her. She had been vulnerable that night, raw with the pain of feeling invisible in her own marriage. "I shouldn't have said those things," she whispered, though she knew it was too late to take them back. "But you did say them," David replied, his voice tender but firm. "And I've been thinking about them every day since." "Elena, I see you. I see how you light up when you talk about the books you're reading, how you hum under your breath when you're cooking, how you still believe in magic even when the world has tried to convince you otherwise." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for months. When was the last time Marcus had noticed any of those things about her? When was the last time he had really looked at her, not just glanced up from his phone or his laptop? "This isn't fair," she said, her voice breaking. "You can't do this to me. You can't make me feel things I have no right to feel." David's expression softened, and he reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped himself. "I'm not trying to make you feel anything, Elena. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm in love with you. I have been for a long time." The words hung in the air between them like a confession in a cathedral, sacred and terrifying. Elena felt the ground shift beneath. Her feet felt the careful walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. "How long?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. David looked down at his hands, and when he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Remember your birthday 2 years ago? Marcus had to work late again, and you were so disappointed. You tried to hide it, but I could see it in your eyes. You had made this beautiful dinner, wore that blue dress that made you look like starlight, and you were sitting alone at the table when I arrived." Elena remembered that night with painful clarity. She had spent hours preparing Marcus's favorite meal, had even bought new candles for the table. But a last-minute conference call had derailed their plans, and she had sat alone with 2 place settings and a cake she had baked herself. "You showed up with flowers," she said softly. "Peonies. You said you remembered they were my favorite." "Marcus had forgotten," David said simply. "He's a good man, Elena. He's my best friend, and I would never want to hurt him. But he's forgotten how to see you, how to cherish you. And watching you fade away a little more each day, it's been killing me." The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil in Elena's heart. She thought about her marriage, about the comfortable routine it had become. Marcus wasn't a bad husband. He provided for them. He was faithful. He was kind in his distracted way. But somewhere along the line, they had stopped being lovers and become roommates. They had stopped dreaming together and started simply existing in the same space. "I think about you when I wake up," David continued, his voice growing stronger. "I think about you when I'm at work, when I'm driving home, when I'm lying in bed at night. I think about what it would be like to wake up beside you, to hear you laugh first thing in the morning, to be the one who gets to hold you when you're scared or sad or happy." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. "David, stop. Please. I think about growing old with you," he said, ignoring her plea. "I think about reading books together on Sunday mornings, about traveling to all those places you've always wanted to see. I think about loving you the way you deserve to be loved, with attention and passion and wonder." Tears were streaming down Eleanor's face now, and she didn't try to stop them. "You don't understand what you're asking of me. You don't understand what this would mean. I understand that I'm asking you to blow up your life," David said, finally closing the distance between them. "I understand that I'm asking you to hurt someone we both care about. I understand that I'm asking you to take a leap of faith that could destroy everything. But Elena, I also understand that we're both slowly dying in this situation we've created." He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Every instinct told her to step back, to maintain the boundary they had carefully maintained for so long. But her feet seemed rooted to the floor. "I love Marcus," she said, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "I know you do," David replied, "and I love him too. But Elena, loving someone and being in love with someone are 2 very different things. You love Marcus like family, like a brother, but you're not in love with him anymore. Maybe you never really were." The accusations stung because it held a grain of truth Elena had been trying to ignore. She had married Marcus because he was safe, because he was the kind of man her parents approved of. because he represented stability and security. But had she ever felt the kind of consuming passion for him that she was feeling for David right now? Even if that's true, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What are you suggesting? That I leave my husband for his best friend? That I destroy 2 relationships for the possibility of something that might not even work? David's hand moved to her cheek, and this time he didn't stop himself. His touch was gentle, reverent, as if she were made of something precious and fragile. I'm not suggesting anything, Elena. I'm just telling you how I feel. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. The touch of his hand sent electricity through her entire body. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with such tenderness, such desire. Marcus's touches had become perfunctory over the years. Quick kisses goodbye. Brief hugs hello. The casual contact of 2 people who shared a space but had forgotten how to share themselves. I can't, she said, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Can't what? David asked softly. Can't leave him? Can't be with me? Or can't stop feeling what you're feeling right now? Elena closed her eyes, trying to block out the intensity of his gaze. All of it. I can't do any of it. Then we'll figure it out together, David said. We don't have to make any decisions tonight. We don't have to hurt anyone tonight. But Elena, please don't ask me to pretend anymore. Please don't ask me to sit at your dinner table and make small talk while my heart is breaking for want of you. The sound of footsteps upstairs made them both freeze. Marcus was moving around in the bedroom, probably going to the bathroom. In a few minutes, he would probably come downstairs for his nightly glass of water, and he would find them standing there, David's hand still on Elena's cheek, their bodies close enough that the air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. They stepped apart quickly, the spell broken by the reminder of reality. Elena wiped her eyes while David moved back to the other side of the kitchen island, putting distance between them. But the words that had been spoken couldn't be taken back, and the feelings that had been acknowledged couldn't be ignored. I should go, David said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Yes, Elena agreed, though every fibre of her being wanted to ask him to stay. They stood there for another moment, looking at each other across the kitchen that had become a battleground between duty and desire. Elena memorized the way he looked in the soft light, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the way his eyes held hers with such intensity that she felt she might burn up from the inside. Elena, he said as he reached for his jacket. Don't, she said quickly. Don't say anything else, please. He nodded, understanding that they had already said too much and not nearly enough. He shrugged into his jacket and moved toward the door, pausing only when his hand touched the handle. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, I think you're worth fighting for. I think you're worth the risk. And I think you know that what we have is rare and precious and real. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Elena alone in the kitchen with the echo of his words and the weight of her own conflicted heart. She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her. Upstairs, she could hear Marcus settling back into bed, probably already half asleep again. He would wake up tomorrow morning, kiss her goodbye and go to work, completely unaware that his world had shifted on its axis while he slept. He would come home tomorrow evening and David would probably be there for dinner again, just like always. Except nothing would ever be the same. Elena looked at the chair where David had been sitting, at the coffee cup that still held the warmth of his hands. She thought about his words, about the way he had looked at her, about the way her body had responded to his touch. She thought about the life she had built with Marcus, the years they had shared, the history they had created together. But mostly, she thought about the way David had said her name, like it was something sacred, something to be treasured. She thought about how long it had been since anyone had said her name like that, with such reverence and desire. Outside, the storm continued to rage, washing the world clean. Elena sat in her kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of her ordinary life, and wondered if she had the courage to step into the unknown. She wondered if love was worth the risk of losing everything she had built, everything she had settled for. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of another. Elena knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new possibilities. She knew that she would have to face Marcus. Across the breakfast table, would have to look into his trusting eyes and decide whether to shatter the comfortable illusion they had been living. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of her kitchen, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to choose love over safety, passion over comfort, possibility over certainty. She allowed herself to remember the way David's hand had felt against her cheek, the way his voice had wrapped around her name like a promise. The rain began to slow, and Elena realized that the storm was passing. But she also realized that the real storm was just beginning, and she was standing at the center of it, holding the power to destroy or create, to break hearts or heal them. As she finally made her way upstairs to bed, Elena carried with her the weight of David's confession, and the knowledge that her life would never be the same. She slipped quietly into bed beside Marcus, who stirred briefly, and then settled back into sleep, one arm reaching across the space between them to rest on her waist. The gesture, once comforting, now felt like a chain. Elena lay awake in the darkness, listening to Marcus's steady breathing, feeling the warmth of his body beside her, and wondering if she was brave enough to fight for the love she had found in the most impossible place. Tomorrow would bring new choices, new challenges, new possibilities. But tonight, Elena held David's words close to her heart like a secret flame, warming her from the inside out, giving her hope that maybe, just maybe, she was worth fighting for after all. The last thing she saw before sleep finally claimed her was the memory of David's eyes, full of love and longing, and the promise of something beautiful and dangerous, and utterly life-changing. And for the first time in years, Elena fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of possibilities she had never dared to imagine.